What's up and what's happening, TPE family? We're back with another episode of the Pivot Experience Podcast, where our aim and goal is to help leaders get better each and every week. As you guys know, we love to bring leaders onto the platform that have a story to tell, that is experienced and seasoned in the area of leadership. You know, we all have a heart for leadership, and we understand that everything rises and falls on leadership. If you guys keep up with us on our socials, you guys know that we do a monthly program called Lead Better, which is a free virtual event that we host to help people who are wanting to become operators, wanting to own their own businesses. We bring guests in to talk and have an interactive session. Well, on this podcast, we have a very special guest. This is going to be a first for us. We have operator Nick Westbrook with us, and he's joining us. He has been gracious enough to join us. He is a Chick-fil-A operator, been an operator for what you say, 7 years now?
7, yes.
7 years, and he is the host of the Shepherd Leadership Podcast. And so he's a fellow podcaster. He puts out a ton of valuable content. We're going to talk at the end of this on how you can get connected with him, because I'm telling you, this is a guy you want to follow. This is somebody that you want to have in your arsenal of people that you keep up with to help you get better. Everything that I see from Nick on a very consistent basis just screams that he loves leadership and really understands how to communicate it. You know, I've been around some people who are great leaders, but they may not have been the best at communication. And the thing that I love about Nick is that he has proven to me and to several other people that he can communicate at a very high level. And I was just excited for him to accept this invitation to come speak with us. Nick, how are you doing today?
Oh, Alex, I'm doing so great. I'm really, really excited to be on your show. You do a great job. You've been doing a great job for the brand of Chick-fil-A for a long, long time. So I'm honored to learn from you and to be on your show and to spend some time with your listening community. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So me and Nick were connecting before we got started on the recording, and Nick shared with me that he was an external candidate, meaning he did not, like some of us, grew up in a Chick-fil-A. He didn't have all this glorious Chick-fil-A backstory. He doesn't know about a lot of the lore of the brand and really the struggle, right? You know, some of us who came in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, you know, the volume of what we do now is not near as what it is. I think Chick-fil-A has always been a brand that has been centered on doing a good job, but we really started taking off in, say, like the early 2010s, and kind of really where Nick came into the brand. So I would love for him to share with us his story, I guess, an introduction of who you are, Nick. What did you do in your previous life? What sparked you to become an operator? Just give us, a spill on you.
Yeah, great. It's a fun story. It's an unlikely story. I did not plan to end up here like many of your listeners, and even you, like you said, I did not. I didn't grow up in Chick-fil-A. I knew about Chick-fil-A, but it wasn't my ultimate goal from the time I was in high school or in college to be a Chick-fil-A operator. It really wasn't on my radar. I wanted to be a football coach. My football coaches had made a significant impact on my life as a young man coming from a very broken home, and they took a young man with a little bit of ability and a lot of heart. They led me to the Lord. They really took that ability and helped shape it and maneuver it into creating the young man that I became and the man that I am. So I wanted to do that for other young men. And so I got that opportunity really early. I became a high school head football coach at 24 years old in the state of Georgia. And I coached a Christian school just outside of Atlanta, and we had a lot of success really early. Was Georgia Coach of the Year a few years into that, and just pushed really, really, really hard. Loved my team, loved everything that we were doing. And then my wife and I started a family, and we had our daughter. And she was amazing, but I also wanted to spend time with my daughter, which coaching did not lend a lot of flexibility to do. And so as glorious and great as coaching high school football was, I saw that, man, this is going to be a challenge down the road. And my wife and I just really prayed about it. As much as I loved what I did, I really thought that I needed to make a different professional change for my family because I wanted to be around and in my kids' lives. So, and a lot of coaches do that really, really well, but I knew that I did not have that gear. I was all in or nothing, and I was working 100 hours a week, and so couldn't continue to do that. And so I got the opportunity to go into the business corporate world. Got asked to help lead a sales division for a company in Atlanta. I resigned from my coaching job, did that for 10 years, and went really hard, led that team, and man, it was crazy. My wife and I went through a time where we just had an incredibly challenging few years in our marriage for lots of reasons. And one of the main ones was because I was just really, really hard to live with. I was extremely ambitious and very goal oriented, and I was driven and driven and driven. And it just put a really big wedge in between my wife and I. And loved my family, loved my girls, loved my wife, but man, I was really difficult to live with. In that time, we were encouraged to go to a WinShape marriage intensive. If you've been around Chick-fil-A any length of time, you know what WinShape is. It's the ministry arm of Chick-fil-A. I was very familiar with their camps for kids because my girls have gone to WinShape camps their whole life now. But back then, I think they had gone to like one of the community camps. Like we were very familiar. But I did not know about this marriage ministry they had, and so we were encouraged to go to a WinShape marriage intensive, and it was a week long, and it changed our life. It literally, honestly, we think it saved our marriage and changed our life. And I remember coming back from that intensive, and you know, I looked at Brooke, my wife, and I said, if this is what this company does by selling chicken sandwiches, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping them sell chicken sandwiches. I don't know if I got to sweep the floor or what I've got to do, but this is just, they're doing impactful, meaningful work. And I knew several people that worked at Chick-fil-A. Two of my college roommates were operators. It just never been on my radar. I started asking a lot of questions, and they were like, yeah, good luck. That's never going to happen. And I applied originally, Alex, funny enough, I applied to be a business consultant. I saw a role on LinkedIn where you and I connected. I saw a role on LinkedIn and I applied for it. Talked to one of my friends that worked at corporate and went in and talked to Andre Kennebrew. Some of you on this may know Andre, who has retired from Chick-fil-A now and works for LifeShape. He's a great friend now, but he, in about 20 minutes of that conversation, he said, I would never hire you to be a business consultant, ever. You could not work here. We would get really tired of you, and you would get really tired of us. If you're going to be in part of Chick-fil-A, you need to be an operator. And so that put it on my radar. I started to pray through it, and you know, the process is what it is. You know all about that, I'm sure. And you know, I had never worked in a Chick-fil-A, never worked in a restaurant, never owned my own business. But you know, we prayed Proverbs 21:1 through the entire process. It's a good verse. I'd like to share it with your listeners. It says, the king's heart is like a stream of water in the hands of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. And we said, hey, like, if the Lord wants to turn the hearts of Chick-fil-A toward us, then it will have to be all his doing, because we really don't have the resume that some of these other guys do. And he did. And you know, lo and behold, we got selected. And we opened Chick-fil-A Hinesville, which is about an hour southwest of Savannah, Georgia. Opened Chick-fil-A Hinesville, Georgia in June of 2017. And we've been cooking and selling chicken ever since.
Wow. So there's a few things that you said that I want to kind of just highlight. Number one, I'll start with the brand. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I've worked here for as long as I have is just the exposure, not only win shape, but how Chick-fil-A prioritizes family in general. Like it's
Right.
evident in how the leadership of the business is evident in. I've been to Atlanta a few times, and just to hear the children and the grandchildren talk about legacy. And I think for me, when as a young man raising a family myself, one day wanting to look at what am I doing with my family in terms of how to generate that same level of influence and legacy. And I really love being able to be indirectly underneath that tree to just watch and listen to some of the things that they talk about. Man, I'll never forget, I was in Atlanta for a checkpoint. This might have been the same year that you got selected. Literally, I think it was in 2016, and they brought Mark Cathy in. And he was talking about just the annual retreat that they would have, or and how strategic they were with, hey, when the kids were 3 and 4, we start doing these things with them, and the kids turn this age. It blew my mind. I just never. Now, granted, you don't have this level of success without being intentional. So it makes sense,
Sure.
but just to hear it is amazing. So just I love the way they weave family into everything and how they prioritize it. But I really want to talk about, you had a passion and was performing at what it sounds like one of the highest levels that you could perform at, and you pivoted out of that. Can you just
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit? I know that's not really, that wasn't in our script, but I think it's worth noting to say you had a dream to do something as being a head coach. You attained that
Hmm.
dream, and to be a top head coach in a state that probably produces some pretty good football players. You guys got some great college programs there for sure, and to be able to be amongst the best at the high school level. I mean, can you talk about that? Like what the mindset
Sure.
or some of the decision making? I know you mentioned the family aspect for sure, but I'm sure
Yeah.
you had to have some other internal tugs. And how did you get over those things?
Yeah, great question. The external fact, there were two. There were external and internal factors. The external factors were time and money. Time, one, I was working 100 hours a week. I loved what I did. I loved the boys I got to coach. I loved the school I got to coach at. I believed in everything that we did around kingdom education, kingdom athletics, and I loved the mission. I loved everything about what we did, and would give myself fully to it. Some of your listeners may resonate with that and their affinity for Chick-fil-A. And my wife loved it. She was on the sideline giving out water. She had her own little place in the press box. Like she loved everything that we did. The reality was when we really wanted to start growing our family, I knew how important it was because I did not have a great parental. I mean, especially from a mother standpoint, I didn't really have my mom in my life a lot at all, and I knew how important it was to me to really be present, more than just emotionally present, but physically present with my girls. And so I wanted to be able to do that. And then two, pay. I got my job really young, and coach. Being a head football coach looks very glamorous, and it's great, it's fantastic. But until you really start, until you've been doing it a long time, you really don't start making the money that is comparable to the time that you're putting in. We were very committed to my wife staying home with our girls. That was a personal decision for us. And man, we were going to cut our income by 60%. She made more money than I did. And I was like, man, we just bought a home. What are we going to do? So those are the external factors. Internal factors, I think, is really important to point out too. Even though I loved what I did, I love the people that I got to do it with, and I love the mission of what we were doing. Alex, very honestly, I was getting burnout. Even though I loved it, I was not taking care of myself physically, mentally. I found myself angry a lot when we weren't performing well. And all these things, all these emotions were coming up in me. And man, if it were just the external factors, I probably could have had some workarounds in those. But I also had some internal factors that inside of me were going, can I do this for 30 years? can I really do this for 30 or 40 years at this rate and not end up, like a statistic, And so there were those two things going on. And so, and honestly, I didn't go out necessarily looking for something. I was in a Bible study group, and the guys that I was with, I was sharing with them, hey, guys, I need y'all to pray about this. And they're like, you're the head football coach in our town. You can't resign. What are you talking about? Like we played for the state championship last year. You can't resign. But one of the guys in that Bible study, his dad owned a company in Atlanta, and they needed somebody to run their sales organization. And so he mentioned it to his dad, and that's kind of how that came about. And so the Lord just worked those things. And so I really believe, though, that the Lord allowed me to spend that time coaching and building winning teams. My career has been even though it's been three very separate careers, they've been very similar thematically, where what I do well, what the Lord put me well together to do is to build winning teams. And I did that as a coach. I did that in the corporate world, and really those two things combined with some ministry experience that I had in college really came together well at Chick-fil-A. Coaching, business, ministry, all really kind of came together well for what I think the Lord was preparing me for in my mid-30s, was this opportunity to have a Chick-fil-A restaurant. So anyway, yeah, that's how that came about.
Man, I love that. And I think your story is a real illustration of, you might think you are passionate about something as a young man, and you attain that. And in your case, you did it at the highest level. And that really might not be, as you mature in your relationship with God, as you mature and really find, start building a family, your priorities change. I can speak into that. When I got married and we started having kids, it was like, what you thought, what you wanted out of life totally changes when, God puts the responsibility of you raising another person, and not just raising another person in the form of your children, but doing life with another individual in the form of your spouse. So no, I appreciate your candor there. I appreciate your transparency there for sure. And I just love that. So I kind of want to transition into talking about your tenure as an operator. You shared some good things with me off mic, and I just want to kind of start that conversation off with, like, what are some of the guiding leadership principles you use in your leadership as an operator, and how have those things contributed to your success?
Yeah. Well, one, I think, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, that everything rises and falls on leadership. I've seen that to be extremely true. And I love John Maxwell's material. He's so good, and he has written so much good material for us to glean the truths of leadership that come out of the Bible and everyday life. I love his 21 irrefutable laws of leadership and study those. He has a formula, if you will, of leadership that I really like. And it is, and I share this with my team at the very beginning stages of anyone that wants to be a leader. Maxwell says that leadership is influence. Plain and simple.
Nothing
It's
more,
just
nothing less.
leadership equals influence. And now there's good leadership and bad leadership. So there's good influence and bad influence. But all of leadership is influence. And when we're talking about the type of influence we want as leaders, there's a timeline or a formula, if you will, that Maxwell says that builds to the ability to influence. One thing I tell our guys when they get promoted, hey, I can name you a director. I can't name you the leader. The team will decide that, right? And so this is his formula. As his one, you build rapport. And so basically what we would say at Chick-fil-A is chemistry. That's the chemistry part of our 3 C's, right? Character, chemistry, and competency. But you build rapport, do people like being around you? Are you enjoyable to be around? Do you have to walk on eggshells around you or not? Do they just enjoy being around you? Two, once you build rapport, then you build credibility. Does this person know what they're talking about? Right? Do they, do they, can they do what they say that they can do? Can I, do they have credibility? We would call that after chemistry, we would call that competency at Chick-fil-A. The third is trust. You build rapport, then you build credibility, and then you build trust. Does this person, do they do what they say they will do? That's the essence of trust. Do I believe this person will do what they say they will do, which is character for us in Chick-fil-A. And not only will they do what they say they will do, are they who they say they are? And do I think that they have my best interest at heart? That's ultimately when someone decides to trust you, that's what they're saying. Hey, I believe that you have my best interest at heart when you're making a decision and when you're telling me to do things. And at that point, then you get to the fourth thing, which is influence. So rapport, credibility, trust, and then influence. And so this command and control leadership, that is, people do what you tell them to do, that is not influence. That is autocratic leadership. What someone makes a decision, someone makes a setup, someone makes a plan, you execute the plan, and if you don't, there are consequences, right? There has to be some of that, but when you have influential leadership, it's when people want to do what, this is what Horst Schulze says, that built the Ritz-Carlton. He said, great leadership is when leaders create an environment where people want to do the things necessary for all of us to reach the destination. I mean, that's what we want, right? And so I think what I learned throughout my leadership journey from being entrusted with people from my early 20s and all the just pyramid of mistakes that I've made in leadership over my career is that influence-based leadership that really creates an environment where you gather the right people together that want to do the things necessary for all of us to reach the destination. That's the type of leadership that lasts and leaves a legacy, and that not drains us, but gives us life into what we set out to do in the first place. And so, yeah, so that's kind of that's the foundation. That's kind of what we start with and what we say. This is the type of place we want to have and come to work in every day.
No, I love that. John Maxwell surely is a titan in the space. I remember, maybe this is a little bit before your time as an operator. Chick-fil-A would bring him in to what you know as Next. It used to be called Seminar back in the day. And John Maxwell was a reoccurring guest at Seminar for sure. And when my operator, Robert, would come back from Seminar, and I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, but he would come back with these DVDs of all the talks and all of the things. Now you can just click a button and it's on demand on your computer. But
Right.
you had to work a little bit if you wanted to do it back when. But no, Maxwell is incredible. And so you've given me John Maxwell's formula for leadership, but you have this concept that I've been hearing a lot about. I have a good acquaintance by the name of Joshua Swing, and he speaks on this concept that you have called shepherd leadership. In your podcast is named Shepherd Leadership. Can you unpack what does shepherd leadership mean? How was it birthed, and how is it bringing you success in your organization?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I love this concept. I love to talk about it. It is unique. We call it shepherd leadership. The premise of shepherd leadership and the goal of shepherd leadership is to shepherd those entrusted to you so that they will thrive and that you can be a leader that they will follow for life. That's the idea of being a good shepherd leader, is so that those entrusted to you will thrive. It's the idea, and it's a biblical concept, really built out of Psalm 23, where David is writing a poem, and what I think is that poem was like a letter back to God, thanking him for showing him how to be what he was called as the shepherd king of Israel. And those 6 verses really detail some principles that were true of how God led David and how he expected David to lead Israel. And it gave us a great idea of what Jesus is called the Good Shepherd, right? And if we're going to lead in a Christ-like way, and then we can take these principles of like, what does a shepherd do? And really, in a way, lead in these shepherding type principles. And so it birthed out of some really, really bad mistakes in my life and in my leadership. First, in my marriage, I told you that we had been pushed to windshape. I thought that I thought I'd been doing everything right. I grew up, my coaches really helped disciple me as a young believer through high school, college, went through college ministry, found a lovely wife that loved the Lord, and coached at a Christian school, had been taught servant leadership, believed in it. And I was exhausting myself serving what I thought, serving my wife and my family, serving at work and coaching and serving my organization, everything I was doing. And things just started to crumble down all around me. And I'm looking at things and going, I'm working my tail off, thinking I'm doing everything the right way. Sure, I'm intense, I think is the word that most people use to describe me, is intense. I'm intense. I go hard. I'm passionate. I care a lot. Gregarious. Like I go. And but it comes out of this heart to serve. And what I found was, long story short, Alex, is that people can be grossly overserved and underled. And I think that is a huge miss. I'm not against servant leadership. I think you have to be a servant leader, absolutely. But I think what we miss is that people can be served with every bit of your energy and still not be led well. And that was the instance that I found myself in. But if people are shepherded well, they can never be underserved. And so the way it came about, I had a mentor of mine sit down with Psalm 23 in this really challenging time I had in my marriage, and he turned it around and he said, "Hey, I want you to read this, and I want you to stop when you don't agree with what the psalmist is saying." And I started reading, and I'd read it a million times before, but I started reading, and he said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I stopped, and I wept in that Starbucks for 30 minutes because I couldn't say that was true. And so what I realized is that I had not looked to the Lord as my shepherd. I had looked to him as my genie, or or as this decoration on my life that made me actually look better. I mean, I love the Lord, believed in all the biblical principles and things like that. But if I was really honest, like, I didn't look to the Lord as my shepherd, and therefore I was not able to shepherd those that were entrusted to me. And so it just started to change this mindset of mine. And so I read Psalm 23 every day for 4 months and just let it really marinate into who I was. And I realized that those 6 verses were not just meant to be put on the back of a funeral card and for us to recite when we're sad. Like, it's actually a blueprint for great leadership. And I started to walk through that. I learned a lot of things about what shepherds actually do, and how those 6 verses were the personification of how a good shepherd cares for those entrusted to them, and develop these 4 principles of what a good shepherd leader does. And so a good shepherd leader will know those entrusted to them. They will guide those entrusted to them. They will protect those entrusted to them and provide for those entrusted to them. So know, guide, protect, and provide so that those entrusted to you will thrive and that you can be a leader they can follow for life. And it has changed drastically changed not only my leadership, but it's changed those I've had the opportunity to do life with, including, my family, my daughters, and my team. So that's it.
I love that. Know, protect, guide, and provide. Man,
Yeah,
I
no guide. Yeah, no guide, protect, provide. It's got a little bit of a memorable, kind of rhythm to it. No guide, protect, provide. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love just the how this was birthed out of it sounds like to me an extreme moment of self realization, right? You had a chance to look in the mirror, and I almost heard you say, and I don't know if you said this exactly, but you were pouring out a lot, but maybe wasn't getting, pouring back into yourself a bit, or you were pouring out a lot to people, but maybe just kind of not being backfilled by what the real source is, the real
Well, that
foundation.
I was well that and I was pouring out, and I was not seeing results from what I was pouring out. Like I was just, I was working and giving and giving and giving, and looking around, and it was like I was serving in a lot of different ways, the ways I thought were right. And I think that's what so many leaders, especially Christian leaders or well-intended leaders or people that, really, fall under servant leadership, which I do. I love servant leadership. I just think it's incomplete. I don't think it's enough. I think that people appreciate being served. They love to be shepherded. They want to be shepherded. And that's the real difference that I saw, is that when I really saw the intent that I had to really get to know those entrusted to me, that in a way that a shepherd gets to know his flock. I learned this, Alex. This is so this blew my mind. But a good shepherd will get into the face of each one of his flock, very often, every other day, especially every week, because sheep, their facial tissue is very soft and very moist. They can't protect themselves. They can't get anything out of their face. And so parasites will embed themselves into the facial tissue of a sheep. And it can become so irritating to the sheep that they'll ram their head into a rock or an object or other sheep, or they'll end up even running themselves off of a cliff, and into a ditch, just in order to relieve themselves of this irritant. And so a good shepherd will get in the face of his flock and inspect each one of them to see what's going on with them. They'll dig inside the wool, like really get in there to know what's going on with those in their care. And so, so important to us to know those entrusted to us. Like, I've been married to Brooke for 21 years. And I think I've been married to probably, I know 2, but maybe now going on 3 different women. The same person, but 3 different women. And it's important that I work to get to know her constantly and know what she's thinking, what's going on in her life, what's shaping her different decisions. My team, it's important that I know them, know their background, know what they're coming into work with, know what their goals are, know where they want to go. How in the world can I lead them well if I don't know them well? And so that's just one. I could the we could go on forever and talk about this. I'm so passionate about it now. It really encompasses all of what I get to talk about now, and I'm so excited about what it does to really change people's lives when leaders understand that, hey, if you just aim to shepherd people well and you focus not on you thriving as the leader, not on your car counts and your profit goals, and you got to have all those are important. We have those. We have all those things, but all of those are an end byproduct of shepherding people really well so that they thrive. Because at the end of the day, Alex, if a shepherd returns a flock, most shepherds don't own the flock that they are shepherding. They've been given to them by the owner. And so if the shepherd returns that flock to the owner and they're scrawny, they're timid, he's missing half of them, they've run half of them off, they're diseased, all of these things, what is the owner going to turn around and do? He's going to say, "What have you been doing?" It's not just to get to the end result. It's so that they return a flock that's thriving, and that owner turns around and says, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And so everything that I focus on is that my director team is thriving. Period. Period. That is my job description, to ensure that the 11 people that I have entrusted to run and care for my organization, that the different parts of what they do, that those 11 people are thriving. And if they are thriving, I really don't have to worry that much about my organization thriving. And I've taught them this method. Does that make sense? I'm rambling. I could go forever, man. If you got to interrupt me if I'm going too much.
I didn't want to because number one, this is a very small thing. I think I found the name of this episode is going to be "Digging in the Wool," because
There you go.
I did not know about that fact of a shepherd. And I guess to give you some additional context, the way Josh puts it, he's like, one thing that Nick does is you know how Josh, he has that voice. He's
He's
like, one
great.
thing, yeah, he's awesome. He said, Nick makes sure he goes and speaks to every person on his team. And I was like, well,
That's right.
in my head, I was like, okay, that's a great thing to, that's a good leadership quality to have. I would like to hear more about the mindset, what the intentionality is, and you just explained it. Like without going into great detail of the parallel, I got it. Like how much, and I'm gonna talk to
Yeah,
my,
that's it.
yeah, how much are we
Yeah, that's
digging
it.
into
That's
the
the
wool?
idea is we will, and every one of my directors have that same imperative. I don't have a lot of these are the rules, right? I don't like a lot of that. When I was coaching at Georgia Tech, Chan Gailey had one rule. He said, "Do the right thing." And so I thought that was really good. That really covered a lot of other rules. And so, but this is one of them for my guys, is that every time when you walk into work, all 11 of you, when you walk into work, you must make eye contact and say the person's name, say hello, and talk to every single person on the shift. Front, back, wherever they are, you walk around, you tell them you're here, you look in their eyes, and you say hello. It's very small, but it's very intentional, and it makes a lot of headway. And it's because you can really, and it comes from that principle of digging in the wool, looking in the face of the sheep. You can tell a lot of what's going on with somebody and where they're at just by looking in their eyes, you know, and what type of answer they give you. And that one discipline and behavior has led to so many conversations that have, man, it's been so fruitful, for so many people. And so, yeah, it's a really cool thing. But that principle of knowing those entrusted to you led to that discipline.
No, that's awesome. I think you're speaking to something that keeps your leaders like emotional intelligence muscle always in gear. Reading that body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice, the words they're using, the things they're not saying. You get an opportunity to get a clear snapshot of what those things are for people, and then maybe give you some more just headway and insight on how to navigate throughout the shift, navigate post conversations with them. Hey, I noticed when I first came in, you look like something was troubling you. You wouldn't have those opportunities if you did not instill that practice into your organization. And I guess that
That's
leads
right.
me to the next question is, give me one example of how you've seen shepherd leadership transform a result in your organization.
Mm, mm. I am going to this is my favorite one, although it's a little tough. A young man named Noah. Noah started working for me when he was 16. He started working in the kitchen. I usually don't put 16-year-olds in my kitchen, but Noah at 16 came to me and said he wanted to be an operator. And so um, most people that tell me they want to be an operator, I put them in the kitchen first to see if they really want to be an operator. and and so Noah started working in the kitchen, and he worked his way into leadership positions. He's a great young man, great kid, great work ethic, and he worked his way into leadership positions. And by 19 years old, maybe 20, he was a high level leader. He was a shift leader, what I call a captain. He owned a day part in the kitchen. He was leading nighttime kitchens at Chick-fil-A, which can be difficult. The nighttime kitchen at Chick-fil-A was his. He owned it. It was his team. And I can't think, he was 19 or 20 years old, and he had begun to have an amount of arrogance in him that was really compromising a lot of decisions that he was making. Uh, he had been passed over for a director promotion. He was really young, still needed some time to mature and bake in the oven, if you will, in his leadership, and he didn't deal with that super well, and made some decisions where I ended up having to terminate him. And it was really tough. I love Noah, love his family. He actually had got in that time, he had gotten married. He was 20, that's right, because he had married another young lady that worked for me, and they both worked at Chick-fil-A, and I had to come to the decision that I had to terminate him, because and how does that relate to shepherd leadership? Because there's two principles here, really all of them, but specifically the protect principle, right? One, I had to protect the rest of my team from his poor leadership decisions and his poor leadership behaviors that were going on. But then I also had to protect him from, and what I saw in him was this arrogance that was growing in him. And I told him, I said, and this is what I said. I said, I hope that there's a time that you get to come back to Chick-fil-A, but right now you need to go do a few other things. You've only ever worked at Chick-fil-A. You need to go work somewhere else. And find out what that's like. And maybe you may not ever want to come back to Chick-fil-A. And so he did, and he spent the next year and a half working construction. And Noah did come, and it was so great. And his wife, continued to work for me, and we planted a church. Noah was great at music. I knew Noah was great at music. He had done music events for us in the restaurant before. We had planted a church, and I called Noah and I said, "No, I know you're really great at music. We need someone to lead music at our new church plant. Would you consider it?" And I think he was blown away that I called him, right? And we had a coffee, and I introduced him to the other guys, and he started doing it. And through that opportunity, we started to spend some more time together, you know, and then he started to realize and come back to, you know, to all the things that he really believed about Chick-fil-A, saw a lot of those things that we had mentioned in him. So now the guide principle starts to come in. And then he came to me and said, they call me Coach at the restaurant. He said, Coach, I really would love the opportunity to come back at Chick-fil-A. And now the provide principle starts to come in, where I get to do what's really cool. In Psalm 23, it says, He anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. That's what the provide principle comes from. And that's the amount, and that's the idea of biblically like pouring a blessing over someone. And I got to, at that time, like tell Noah all the great things that is that the Lord has given him naturally, and what I've seen him grow in, and invited him back to Chick-fil-A. Long story short, he's now our guest experience director up front. He's killing it, doing an incredible job, has a desire to be an operating partner, has slowed his own growth path down, and just said, hey, he's 21 or no, 22, 23 now. And he said, hey, like I need to marinate and set. I need to grow where I am. This is where I want to go, but I don't want to make the same mistake again. So it just kind of came full circle. And Noah would tell you that he is the biggest proponent of shepherd leadership because he had been shepherded well, and now really feels that he's thriving both personally and professionally, and he gets to kind of lead people the same way on our guest experience team. So I mean that's a long story, but it's one of my favorites.
No, I think Nick, and I think this is where I'm gonna wrap us up here. I think that story for me, and one of the competitive advantages that Chick-fil-A has is local ownership. Having an owner operator that is in a city that loves their community, that really has an opportunity to get to know their people. I remember, they used to talk about Truett Cathy saying that he didn't want the franchisees to have more than two restaurants, because how much influence can you have over, when you start getting over the 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, how much does
Yeah.
your influence flow? And I just think that story you just shared is a testament to the power of local ownership. You've been empowered to influence, as John Maxwell describes leadership, the lives of people, and you were not afraid in that moment. That was bold. That was a few bold things you said. Well, number one, anytime you're terminating somebody, that maybe didn't do anything that was severely wrong, just was not functioning as a leader that you wanted. That's tough. That's tough when you have to fire somebody because of the fit. That's a hard termination. And then to call him to serve in a different capacity really speaks to your willingness to continue to want to be connected with the person, because you understand their gifts. You were digging through the wool, and so you knew what their makeup was, and so you knew what their strengths and his talents were. And then to say, come on back. Every shepherd, once a sheep is lost. I mean, this is the whole,
Mhm.
really the crutch of the gospel, right? Jesus is a shepherd
Yeah.
trying to bring the lost. So you were a earthly embodiment of exactly what we all should be doing, not just in the role of an operator, but as a parent, just a community contributor in general. This
Yeah.
is this level, and you said it earlier. Shepherd leadership is not just exclusive to the restaurant, but it flows in all walks of life. So that story was powerful, Nick. I appreciate you. You have shared, for me personally, and I've find myself saying this here lately, especially with some of the guests that I've had. Like, this has been way more impactful for me. I almost forgot that we're going to have other people listening to this. It's almost like a conversation just between you and I. Hopefully, for
We're
those
just
of
hanging
you,
out.
yeah, for sure, man. Hopefully, for those of you who are listening to this, you understand the power of knowing your people. You understand the power of guiding them, providing for them, and protecting them. Like, that's such I'm gonna literally, we have a group chat with our key and core leaders. I'm gonna jump off the call and immediately speak to this, because I've been impacted by the things that you said, and it really just challenges me. Sometimes, again, I shared with you earlier just how many people are in our organization, and a lot of the people can get lost. Especially, I like to think about our restaurants in four quadrants, and the coldest quadrant usually is that night kitchen. Like in terms of everybody that works before 2 o'clock. Especially the front people that work before 2 o'clock. The kitchen staff. Then it starts to get a little fuzzy. Maybe after that, but the component of the team that gets the least amount of praise and acknowledgement is usually that nighttime kitchen staff. And I've been convicted a little bit to say I need to dig in the wool a little bit more with those individuals to see. And I know that's not exclusive to my role, but hopefully I can be influential enough to where other people will do that. So I just want to thank you personally for that. I'm sure those of you who will get a chance to watch this and listen to this is going to, hearing you for the first time, is going to take something away from this that they can incorporate into their leadership toolbox immediately. So before we close up, where can they follow you? Where can they listen to your podcast? Just give us, how can we get in contact with you?
Yeah, would love that. Obviously, the Shepherd Leadership Podcast, you can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, all the places you find your podcasting stations. We're on there, the Shepherd Leadership Podcast. And next month, I don't know when this will air, but the September and October episodes will be former Chick-fil-A president Tim Tassopoulos coming back out of retirement to be on the Shepherd Leadership Podcast. It was such a fun conversation. So that's fun. But yeah, the Shepherd Leadership Podcast, where you can learn about all of those things and listen to a lot of great Shepherd leaders, including my team on some of them. I'm like Alex, you said, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn and connect there. Other than that, I have a funky Instagram page that I that I run that really shows most of my family. But yeah, you can email me, call me. I would love to connect with you guys. Really easy, nick.westbrook@cfaheinsville.com. My cell phone number is 404-964-2368. Call me, text me. If I can serve you or help you, I will do everything I can to do so. And if you want to know about fast drive-thrus, I'll connect you with my leader. Because they probably know a lot more about it than I do. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be on your show, Alex, and thanks for all you do to lead in your restaurants and also just the brand over the last 22 years. I'm standing on the shoulders of leaders like you that built this brand, and I inherited something that I did not build, and I'm trying to keep the legacy alive for what you have built. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you, Nick, more than you know. Again, guys, I hope you were taking notes. If you're going to need to play this back a couple of times to grab all hold of everything that Nick said today. And until next time, TPE family, peace.
Tap into the Pivot Experience, where we help young,